If you're watching our show, you know that Iran is on the doorstep of a nuclear era. Some people think it's just a matter of months. Daniel Pipes says this summer, Iran will go full nuclear. Joining us today live from Washington, D.C. is Clifford May of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. You're the president there, Clifford, and you're going to help us figure out what the United States is going to do about this threat. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu from Israel is meeting with President Obama. Is he going to get any help defending against Iran, or is America going to sit on its hands?
Unless President Obama says something different to Netanyahu than he said in his speech to AIPAC on Sunday, I think Netanyahu is not going to get the kind of help he wants. What we heard on Sunday was President Obama, in a forceful way, saying he agrees with Netanyahu that for the current regime in Iran to get nuclear weapons would be a terrible thing. America doesn't want to see it. America wants to do a lot about it, but is not going as far as Netanyahu needs. The one thing that Netanyahu said that may be not exactly reassuring, but is better than not, is that Israel has a right to defend itself. That may mean that Obama is not going to try very hard to pull on the reins if Netanyahu decides that Israel absolutely cannot allow the regime in Iran, which is threatening genocide, inciting genocide, sponsoring terrorism, to go ahead and get nuclear weapons to carry out possibly the threats it has made.
Okay, so let me be clear here. Who said they have a right to self-defense? Obviously, Israel says that. Did Obama say those same words himself?
Yeah, we heard words to that effect, that Israel does have to make its own choices and will make its own choices, and the U.S. is not going to try to stop Israel from making the choices it has to make. That message, I think, is much more for Iran than for Israel, though it may be directed at Israel as well. Look, Israel would like the United States to be saying right now, Iran is not your problem, Israel. Iran is our problem. It's the free world's problem. Iran, after all, has been for 30 years waging what it calls a global revolution against the West. Iran, for more than 30 years, has said very clearly that it wants to see a world without America, as we know it, that such a world is attainable, as well as a world without a Zionist state, without Israel. That's all part of it as well. I do not think, and I think very few people think, that Obama is going to take military action against Iran between now and the election. After that, who knows? I'm not going to predict, but I don't think so. I think if Netanyahu feels that at a certain point between now and November, Iran enters what he has called the zone of immunity, beyond which Israel cannot reach it, Israel has to do something for that. Israel, at the end of the day, is responsible for itself. Israel was established so that the Jews of the world would never have to rely on others to save them from a Holocaust. And a Holocaust is what's being threatened. Let's be clear.
I want to play for you a couple quotes from Republicans responding to Obama. The first is from Newt Gingrich. Let's roll that clip if we have it, please. It's a board. I'll read it instead. You've had no evidence that the president is prepared to take steps to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. They talk and the Iranians build. You have every evidence that this administration is desperately trying to get the Israelis not to preempt, unquote. So that's Newt Gingrich basically saying, you know, talk, talk, talk. And here's Mitt Romney saying the same sort of thing. I'll quote him. It's pretty straightforward in my view. If Barack Obama is reelected, Iran will have a nuclear weapon and the world will change if that's the case, unquote. So you have the Republicans saying, do something. I got a question for you, Clifford May of Foundation for Defense of Democracies. George Bush was the president for 8 years. And this Iranian threat is not new to the Obama administration. I mean, I like this tough talk from Gingrich and Romney now, but when when the Republicans had the White House, they didn't do anything to stop these nukes either.
It's quite right. They did absolutely nothing. In fact, President Bush, he was preoccupied with Iraq, he essentially delegated the Iran portfolio to the Europeans and said, you deal with it. He was being criticized for being too unilateral, so he was very multilateral when it came to Iran. The Europeans negotiated with the Iranians. Nothing productive came of it. Bush did less, actually, than Obama. One can say that under Obama, and certainly thanks mainly to the Congress, but Democrats as much as Republicans in Congress, I would say, we are seeing serious sanctions, one might even say crippling sanctions, being imposed on Iran right now. They're not yet paralyzing sanctions. They're not yet sanctions that will necessarily bring down the Iranian economy or the government, but they are more serious than we've ever seen in the past. So Obama can say that, and it is absolutely true that for 8 years under President Bush, the Iran can, was kicked down the road.
You know what? Iran still sells its oil to China. Iran is now self-sufficient in refined gasoline. Russia and China still defend Iran in the United Nations. I simply don't believe that these sanctions do have any teeth, especially with Iran being such a major oil producer. I got one last question for you, and it's just asking you to speculate, because I know you don't know any more than the rest of us, but I want to know your judgment. Do you think that Israel will take unilateral military action against Iran like they did some 30 years ago against Iraq?
The simple answer, Ezra, is if they believe that such action will have a good chance of success, not guaranteed, they will do it. What you and I don't really know is what the Israeli capabilities are, given the extent to which the Iranians have buried under mountains and under concrete their nuclear facilities. You don't know that. I don't know that. I hope Benjamin Netanyahu has a fair grasp on that. And the other thing I would say for another time, the sanctions are having a bite economically, not by stopping oil from going into the market, but by making oil a distressed commodity that is selling at very low prices, and the economy is shaking and shivering right now. Is that enough to get Iran to change its mind on this? Probably not, but it's always good to weaken an enemy rather than strengthen one.
Clifford May, thanks so much for joining us today from Washington, D.C. Hey